Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is Kevin, your host, and with me as usual, Adam Okada. And for this episode, we are bringing in one of our newest, not the newest anymore, but one of our newest clinical education specialists here at Healthmark. And her name is Rebecca Peplau, and she just finished up her first international webinar with on our platform here with teaming up with Adam. And I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but we're going to kind of discuss a little bit about what we did on that webinar. So I'd like to direct you to that. Excuse me. If you're just listening to the podcast, please go back to our education tab, our learning management system. What do we call it? Healthmark Academy, right, Adam? Yep.
You got
Go
it.
back to Healthmark Academy and sign up for this. It'll be a past webinar for you now, where Rebecca is speaking because she's going to share all kinds of really cool pictures in there that I really recommend you check out. And we are going to talk about it a little bit here, obviously, but it's not going to do it justice if you don't get a chance to see those pictures and have your mind blown a little bit. So. Rebecca, just kind of getting into it. What I'm gonna kind of go off script already, um, but I just curious, like what kind of curiosity or where did you get this idea to kind of basically cut open surgical instruments and see what's going on inside of them and all that?
Well, it started as a wee young technician in the field, and before borescopes were really not as prevalent or required in IFUs. So I used to always just say, I want to slice this thing in half and see what it looks like, just because you couldn't see inside of it. And then again, working at different facilities that still didn't have borescopes, it just kind of made me wonder what's inside of there. And through the years, like you'd see some articles. I know Jahan Azizi and Ralph
Mhm.
Basile had an article that came out a couple of years back where they cut open a Fraser, and I was like, I want to do that with everything. But especially as the instrumentation became more and more complex, um, it makes you wonder, like, I can't see all those components. I can only see the lumen, but there's this huge box of this robot handle. Like, what else is in there? So it's just curiosity with everything. I think endoscopes kind of started it for me, flexible endoscopes. But then over the years, working as an educator and then as a regular technician, I just started collecting things that were going to get tossed and use them with my education. And heidi ho, here we go. Let's cut some stuff open.
No, that's really cool. And yeah, go see the webinar because there's such amazing visuals that Rebecca has on there. How did you open some of those instruments and get the images of like the channels, some of those channels that like are large at one end and small at the other end? How did you open all that stuff?
I used a Dremel with either a metal cutting disc or a diamond cut disc or a plastic disc. The first robot arm that I tried to open, I couldn't for the life of me just open it. And I tried a Dremel, but it just melted the plastic. So I had to, just play around with it. And then for the larger stuff like the shaver, I just took an angled grinder right down it. So and it was funny because I started working on this a couple months ago, but I don't have a heater in my garage currently, so I was fighting the Maine weather, two winter coats and just out there cutting stuff open. It was fun. I'd do it again. I still want to do more, so.
Well, we appreciate you braving the weather and all the power tools because not many of us have that opportunity to do that. And um, it turned out to produce some pretty cool content in the end. And I'm curious though, what instruments or devices that you cut open would you say maybe were the most complex, or maybe what surprised you about some of those instruments when you got inside of them?
Um, I'll get to that in a second. So I forgot to answer part of Adam's question. To get some of the pictures, I used our 4x magnifier, the LED light up rechargeable one. That was incredible. I also have the Dynolight microscope, and that thing is great for those really, really high magnification levels. But this coupled with the microscope, coupled with my borescope, um, that's what I use to get those pictures and the videos as well. Um, Instrument that surprised me the most, and I know this sounds kind of corny, but like I said, the flexible reamers, because I really
Mm.
didn't think they would come off segmented like that and then have another layer underneath. And that might just be one manufacturer. It might not be every manufacturer, but I was kind of shocked to, oh, this is just coming off. And then also, like I said, the aspirating needle for the laparoscopic procedures. Um, I had no idea that was one whole shaft inside of the 5 millimeter thing. The shavers were really cool for the brand that I was cutting open, didn't have a removable switch. So like actually seeing how insane it was to get in there and look in that housing, um, that was tough. So it was
Yeah,
nice and surprising.
it was a lot of stuff that surprised me. I mean, the reamers I think were a little bit shocking. I think you had some kind of dilator or something that you went in that had two
Oh,
different
yes,
sizes.
the Walther female dilators. Those were absolutely
Yeah,
disgusting. That borescope video is disgusting.
yeah,
But I'm just there, it just goes to show like if you don't have a borescope, you really need to measure all of those components of the lumen to make sure you have the right cleaning equipment because you need friction and fluid. And without like kind of seeing it split in half, there's really no way to, you know, see it.
yeah. And we're not doing it justice here on the podcast because it's audio. We're not able to show those visuals. Go to Healthmark Academy and watch Rebecca's January webinar. It really does have amazing visuals there. Now that you've looked inside, a wide variety of instrumentation. What instruments or areas of instruments would you recommend that techs look for? Because there was so many different things you showed. Was there something in particular you think they should look at and focus on?
Um, I think the robotics have a lot for us to learn with, especially when cracking open the block there, realizing how much potential there is for moisture to not evacuate. And we know that anytime moisture can sit on or in an instrument, biofilm and microbial growth can start within minutes. So seeing that was really eye-opening and an area of concern just because we need to make sure that when we're drying those that they are fully dried. Um, and then also just the amount of I guess by taking the carbon fiber off, it was interesting to see the dynamics of the cables, but then also that lumen port inside there. Um, and it makes you it's interesting. So
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I couldn't help but think of, some of you may not have seen his presentation, but one of our good friends and former coworkers, John Whalen, he used to have a picture of a rubber ducky, just a regular rubber ducky in one of his presentations. And he got the idea of cutting the rubber ducky open. And of course, on the inside, it was a terrible, disgusting amount of
oh
biofilm. Now, the Da Vinci instruments or robotic instruments are at some advantage in a sense that, well, number one, it comes with an IFU on how to process it, but number two, they have limited lifespan. So,
yeah.
there's less time involved for them to have all these issues. However, I think it's invaluable to kind of be able to look inside some of these devices and learn and connect all the dots. Like, why does the IFU say what it does? Like, knowing what you're sharing about what's underneath that cover, that plastic casing or what have you, um, might help you to realize, like, okay, that flushing part is really important, or the soaking part where we submerge it and we prime it is really, really important, right? Like,
Mhm.
I've gone into departments, and I'm sure you guys have seen similar things where they're resource limited in decontam, and so when they see soak the robotic instruments, they find ways that work for them. And I've seen them sitting vertically in a graduated cylinder where only the tips were soaking and the casings were outside of the water, right? So maybe when we connect all of these things, you show pictures and you see what's on the inside of these things, and then you connect that back to the IFU. Maybe it drives it home a little bit better, the why behind those instructions and how important they really are. I don't know if that's kind of, where what kind of happened to you while you were kind of
Yeah.
discovering what was going on inside there, but that's what
Yeah.
made me think, about it.
Yeah, because for me, I'm a very visual, hands-on learner. And so sometimes I need to see like the full picture of what I'm looking at to focus on one part. But you're right, it does having that awareness of how the instrument is fully designed will allow us to be more conscious in our reprocessing steps and say, okay, that's why the IFU says you need to flush this channel for 20 to 30 seconds with a high pressure hose. And that's why you have to do X, Y, Z. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to showcase this stuff, just because it helps for those of us that need the full picture to kind of fully understand. It really helps.
So do you have any final thoughts for the listeners on, what they should look for, or what types of instruments you think are interesting that you found? Any final thoughts for listeners?
Final thoughts again, make sure that if you are going to put a borescope down any instrument, make sure it's okay per the IFU. Like I said, these arms were at end of life, they were out of service, so I put my own, our borescope down but there is very high potential for damage to the borescope and to the channels in there. Second of all, if you're working with power tools, use the right PPE, wear a respirator. So, um, but then also, if you don't have a lumen sizer, I would recommend getting one of those. But also, you can go back to that part on the slide where it shows you exactly what to measure, the inner diameter, the outer diameter, as well, to get your act or the wall thickness, I'm sorry. To get your specific brush sizes if your IFU does not tell you the dimensions that you need. Um, and so that's one big thing. It's knowing how to pick your right size brush if your manufacturer doesn't list it in the IFU.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that. Looking at IFUs as part of like our job, and so I've noticed with shavers and various models of anything, some of them come with recommendations of brushes, some of them don't. So those are great, pieces of advice. But uh, just wrapping up here, I just want to say for those of you listening to this podcast, want to plug it one last time. Go check out the webinar, Healthmark Academy, Rebecca's January webinar. You're going to love the pictures. You won't regret checking it out. So, Rebecca, thank you and great job on your webinar
Thank you.
today. And I hope everybody listening is subscribing to the podcast and check out our Healthmark Education YouTube channel as well, where all of this stuff is housed.